This is the introduction to volume profiling for the core analysis module of Pivot Boss Masters. I am Frank Ochoa, and let's get started. Introduction to volume profiling. We will use volume profiling as our analytical foundation to help us execute our core trading methodology of auction market theory. Basically, volume profiling allows us to literally see the auction process live and in its truest form through price and volume. And all other forms of analysis that we incorporate from this moment forward will be built on this foundation of volume profiling. Volume profiling is going to be our primary analytical tool for identifying value in the charts, identifying value areas, and any outliers where price is likely to see rejection. That's how we're going to use volume profiling. The volume that is traded at a price in any given period is independent of time, and all that matters in the auction is price and volume. And these are the two unfiltered determinants of fair and unfair pricing. As we know from our auction market theory portion of the core principles module, price moves from rejection, which is unfair prices, into acceptance, which is fair prices, and then back to rejection again. This is the natural rhythm of the market, and the volume profile shows us this information in its truest form. No need for moving averages or stochastics or oscillators. This volume profile shows you the auction process, shows you buyers and sellers, where they're positioned, where the market sees value, and where the market is seeing rejection. The volume profile shows you everything you need to know. There are many ways to go about trading, and you have to master all facets of the game, from execution to mindset to analysis to core philosophy. And right now, we understand that auction market theory is our core philosophy, and now this is the beginning of our core analysis. And as a primary goal for any trader, the idea here is to identify value first and foremost. Because if you do not know where value is, then you do not know when price is overvalued or undervalued. You do not know if price is at a discount or at a premium or fair priced. You do not know where acceptance is or rejection is if you do not know where value is. So the primary goal of every trader is always to identify where value is first and foremost. Once you know where value is, that is where acceptance is. That's where buyers and sellers have found acceptance. They trade in high volume, they generate value in that area, and eventually excess, imbalance, and the price discovery phase for value begins all over again. It's the auction process. So when we're using this information, what we're looking for is to identify value. Once you know value, you can then look for price rejection points. After you identify those price rejection points, your goal is to fade areas of rejection and return price back to value. That's the general goal 70% of the time when you're trading, or maybe 80% of the time. Because remember, prices trade within a balanced range most of the time and only trend a small percentage of the time. But volume profiling, regardless of what the market is doing, gives you the best and purest way to analyze price and volume, which are the two important determinants of value in the auction process. So everything we need to execute our auction market theory is encompassed in volume profiling. And the good news is you can use it for any time frame and all markets with valid price and valid volume information. And that's what's truly important. Because when I started really digging into the types of analysis that I wanted to use as a trader, I wanted that type of analysis to be scalable. I wanted to be able to be used across any time frame and for any instrument that I wanted to trade. I didn't want to have to learn 5 different styles of trading to approach 5 different time frames or markets or more. I wanted to learn one core foundational style that allowed me to apply this knowledge that allowed me to execute auction market theory. And volume profiling has everything you need. Now, value is solely determined by volume. The price where the most volume occurred is considered fair value among market participants. This is the volume point of control. And wherever the most volume occurred in any given period of time, that is value. So the more time that's spent at that price, the more volume is generated. And wider acceptance offers balance and fair facilitation of trade between buyers and sellers. That means that buyers and sellers have found agreeable prices in this balanced range, and they conduct business. Our goal as traders is to fade unfair price extremes at rejection and wholesale levels and return price back to value where there's acceptance and retail prices. Inferential statistics is the process of drawing conclusions based on data that are subject to random variation. Inferential statistics is used to test hypotheses and make estimations or forecasts using sample data. And this is exactly what we do in trading. We use price and volume information to make estimations on where price is likely headed, or forecasts on where price could be headed, given a rejection at an outlying price. That's what we do. And perhaps the most important concept in all of inferential statistics is the normal distribution, which is also called the Gaussian distribution or the bell curve. The normal distribution organizes data along a bell-shaped curve, which provides important statistical data points, including the mean, population density, and the outliers of a given data set. Now, this is important. It is this normal distribution that ties volume profiling to our core trading methodology of auction market theory. You see, the essence of auction market theory is to identify prices that are accepted and rejected. Volume profiling does this for us by giving us the mean, which is value, the population density, which is our value area, and outliers, which is rejection points of any given data set, which in this case is price and volume. So in essence, what we studied with regards to auction market theory is illustrated and conveyed perfectly and beautifully through the volume profile. And this is all possible via that normal distribution. The normal distribution is a commonly occurring continuous probability distribution, which means that its cumulative distribution is absolutely continuous. So you can keep feeding this thing data, and over time, that data will continue to fit against that curve. It's a continuous probability distribution because most data sets are shaped along a normal distribution. You have 68%, that middle population that consists of the value area. Everything outside of that, you begin to get 2 standard deviations, 3 standard deviations away from the mean, and that's just like anything in life. So these normal distributions, they're used throughout everything we do to interpret data, from distribution of grades on a test to a population's height or weight. In trading, of course, our normal distribution tells us which prices, given this statistical analysis, that are at value, within value, or outside of value. And that's exactly what we need to know to execute our core trading philosophy of auction market theory. A normal distribution is symmetrical and takes the shape of a bell curve with mirror images on either side of one single peak, which is value. So for our purposes in trading, the peak of the bell curve is value, and this is where the most volume occurred for any given period of time, the value area. That is where 68% of the prices fell within that one standard deviation of value. So that is called acceptance. So that 68% zone right in the middle of the bell curve, that is acceptance. That's fair value. That's the value area, the population density, if you will, of a normal distribution. 95% of all prices fall within 2 standard deviations of value. That's the 14% on either side of the value area. Now that 14% is 2 standard deviations, and this is a zone where if you were a professional trader, you're considering to return price back to value toward the peak of the curve. 99.7% of all prices fall within 3 standard deviations of value, and only 5% of prices fall outside of 2 standard deviations of value, and these are the outliers that we will find. These are the outliers that we will trade. These are the rejection points. So number 1, value is the peak of the bell. It's the very, very top. 68% of prices are considered within value. That means they are within 1 standard deviation on either side of the peak. 1 standard deviation on either side of the mean of value. That is the value area. 16% of prices are considered above value, and 16% of prices are considered below value. And 5% of all prices fall outside of 2 standard deviations. These, again, are the outliers. Rejection points, true rejection points. And remember, this curve is created based on price and volume, the amount of volume that traded at any given price. So, at the outer extremes, there was less volume traded at those prices. If there's less volume traded at those prices, what does that mean? It means the market is rejecting those prices as unfair. So when price goes to those outer extremes and becomes part of the outlier of that data set, what do? You return it back to value. That's professional trading. Seeing a discrepancy between value and where current price is, and then letting them rejoin each other by fading the market at that point. Auction market theory guides us to enter the market outside of value to find those rejection points, also known as wholesale, buying wholesale, for example, and then return that price back to value, back to an area of acceptance where retail prices are. So if you think about it in terms of a shop owner, you buy wholesale. Say you buy some product for $2 at your convenience store, wholesale for $2, and you sell it for $3 at retail. That's the same concept with trading. You're buying price at wholesale prices, and then you're selling price back at retail prices, and perhaps at a premium. That's trading. So according to auction market theory, responsive participants buy in the bottom 16% of the price distribution curve. This is where the discounts are. And then they look to hand off the trade at retail prices in the upper 68%, which is where there is accepted prices, or perhaps beyond those accepted prices into premium pricing territory. So the idea, again, is according to auction market theory, it's telling you, according to this distribution curve, if you want to buy because you believe the market is going higher, you need to buy in the bottom 16% of the price distribution curve. You need to buy below value, below the value area. And then you return price back to value, and sometimes beyond it into premium territory. The flip side, according to AMT, responsive participants sell in the top 16% of the price distribution profile, and this is where premium prices are, and then they hand it off to retail prices in the lower 68%, which is where the value area is. Acceptance. And at times beyond in discount territory. So in this case, there is acceptance and there is rejection. Our core philosophy of auction market theory says to trade at areas of rejection and take the trade back to areas of acceptance. Areas of acceptance is where everyone wants the price at that point. That's why a lot of volume was generated at that level. So if price gets outside that zone and there is a rejection, it's likely headed back to where price was comfortable trading, and that's within value. That's within that middle 68%. Auction market theory also guides that should price push through a rejection point, the market is likely out of balance and has transitioned to a price discovery phase, likely seeking new or prior value. So in this case, we would switch to an initiative role in the auction. And according to auction market theory, if we were initiative buyers, that would require us to buy above value in the upper 50% of the price distribution curve. And we'd be betting to hand it off at higher prices, perhaps at newly created value or at prior value. If we were initiative sellers, on the other hand, we'd be looking to sell in the lower 50% of the price distribution curve, below value. And we'd be looking to hand it off at lower prices, perhaps at newly created value below or at a prior area of value. So essentially, what this scenario is saying is that if the market falls out of balance, then we switch from our responsive participants role in the auction to an initiative participants role. Because what's happening here is we're having a rejection of acceptance. We are having a rejection of the current value area. And if price is rejecting this value area, it's going to seek a new value area where prices and fair facilitation of trade can be agreed upon between buyers and sellers. Does that make sense? So if the market is rejecting current balance, a current area of acceptance, then we look to become initiative participants heading out of the range and toward an area of prior value or toward an area where new value is likely to be created. That's the role. So tying the two together, our core trading philosophy of the auction process and auction market theory, alongside our core analytical foundation, which is volume profiling, these graphics here kind of say it all. You have the circular wheel at top. This is the constant flow of the market. You go from balance to excess. Excess creates imbalance. Imbalance creates a price discovery, seeking new value or prior value. And once that value has been found, you get back to balance. That's exactly what's happening in the price distribution curves below. You go from excess up to value and balance, and then you get excess and imbalance, and then you find excess, value, balance all over again as price moves up and down the distribution curve. And once price is not happy trading within that middle 68%, you see excess, imbalance, and you see price move to another area where a 68% value area can be created. That is the natural rhythm of the market. And for our first two core modules, we are combining the best of both worlds here with regards to professional trading. It's a core philosophy that plain works with a core analytical foundation that is the purest, truest form of analyzing the actual auction process. So to conclude this introduction to volume profiling, here's a few key bullets. Volume profiling allows us to execute our core trading methodology of auction market theory. We will use volume profiling to help us determine fair and unfair pricing according to the normal distribution curve. Volume profiling allows us to see the market's auction process live and unfiltered. 68% of the profile is within value and balance. Rejection occurs in the 16% of prices above and below value. And as responsive participants, you look to enter the market outside of value and look to return price back to value. As initiative participants, you look to enter the market outside of value in search of new or prior value, thus rejecting current value. So these are the main points And as we get moving forward, there was a reason that I didn't show you chart after chart yet of the volume profile. I want you to understand the essence of the statistics, of the probabilities of what we're trying to do at its core before you start to see charts with the histograms on them, with the profiles on them. As you understand exactly what we talked about, as the information in this presentation becomes ingrained, so when you see it on the profile, you immediately know what that means. That's the point where we're trying to get to. We need to get an expertise in this understanding of seeing price and volume through the lens of a normal distribution. Because when you can gear yourself to doing that, you start to hone in on those points on the charts where the outliers are. And if you can identify where those outliers are, that's when you get the best and purest rejections right back to value. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay a solid core foundation here of what volume profiling is. That's what we've done in this presentation. And to follow, we're going to get into some very expert techniques with using volume profiling. And that concludes our introduction to volume profiling for the core analysis module of Pivot Boss Masters.